Olympics, your first Olympics. What was the feeling like?
The Olympic Village is this crazy, bizarre utopia where everything is lush and green and perfect, and everybody is like tall and beautiful and just like stupidly perfect. And it's so bizarre because it's then surrounded by these 3-meter tall razor wire fences, and they usually build these huge villages out in like, quite low socioeconomic areas, because that's where it's cheapest to buy the land. And so it's like you go from like this green, perfect, lush utopia to these razor wire fences, and then just like poverty on the other side of it. It's so bizarre.
You talk it was your most difficult dive. Explain in layman's terms what the dive involves.
It's a backward facing dive, and it's got 2.5 somersaults in it and 2.5 full twists in it. So what's that? 360 plus 360 is 720 plus another 180 is like, I don't know, 1,000 or something. I didn't go to school for math, but yeah, it's a lot of twists and a lot of somersaults. So 2.5 somersaults, 2.5 twists. It was the highest degree of difficulty dive in the Olympics at the time.
True, it was the highest score in Olympic history.
I felt like it could have maybe gone a hair one way or the other.
Yeah.
When I surfaced after the dive and the crowd was just going absolutely ballistic in the water cube, I knew that I had done a really good dive. I was like thanking the crowd, which is customary to do in China. Then the scores came up 10, 10, 9.5, 10, 10, 9.5, 9.5. I had no idea that it was an Olympic record, the highest scoring dive in Olympic history. I had no idea that I'd set the Olympic record already for the highest scoring dive in Olympic history in the semi-final. So I broke my own Olympic record. I had the 2 highest scoring dives in Olympic history for quite a number of years.
You like to do things in a big way, don't you?
The validation that came with winning Olympic gold medal didn't last for very long.
You also went on OnlyFans. Talk us through that. Like that's and it's not something that's so surprising these days. Like a lot of people are doing it. How was that an experience for you?
It's been awesome.
The I Catch Killers podcast was a fresh start for me, as I left policing behind and started a new life. Over the years, we've laughed together, cried, and shared some powerful moments. Welcome to I Catch Killers.
Welcome back to part 2 of my chat with Olympic champion Matt Mitcham. Now, you would think that someone who has the drive and skills to be an Olympic champion at the age of 20, life would be pretty easy. But, as is often the case with our guests that we get on I Catch Killers, sometimes it's not the good things that define a person, but it's other things in their life. And if you listen to part 1, Matt talked about his upbringing, his childhood, and how he got to the point where he was selected in the Australian Olympic team to compete at the 2008 Beijing Olympics. And we left it as Matt was just about to take us into the Olympic Village. Matt, welcome back.
Thank you.
Talk me through it, the excitement of competing at the Olympics, your first Olympics. What was the feeling like?
The Olympics is, obviously it's like the pinnacle of, what you've been working towards. Yeah. So, it's everything, all of those Olympics that you watch, as a kid and everything that you've been training for 10, 15 years. It's kind of happening. And so it's easy to, it'd be easy to kind of get overwhelmed by that and potentially psych yourself out. Yeah. And the Olympic Village is this crazy, bizarre utopia where everything is lush and green and perfect, and everybody is like tall and beautiful and just like stupidly perfect. And it's so bizarre because it's then surrounded by these 3-meter tall razor wire fences, and they usually build these huge villages out in like, quite, low socioeconomic areas, because that's where it's cheapest to buy the land. And so it's like you go from like this green, perfect, lush utopia to these razor wire fences, and then just like poverty on the other side of it. It's so bizarre. But when you don't think about that stuff and just kind of have a look at, your immediate surroundings, it's, I don't know, I guess it's like a kind of a dopamine feast for the brain, like, because everyth's just, like
overload,
bright and yeah.
And there's this athlete, there's that athlete, and all these world stars. What's the mindset you go in there? Because you went there to win, didn't you? You weren't going to be satisfied with just competing. This was the Matt. I've got to be the best here. I'm going to win this. Is that the attitude that you went in with?
Like I had to kind of put those sorts of thoughts aside. Like those sorts of thoughts did occur, but diving's one of those sports where it's not about like absolute speed or absolute strength or absolute endurance, where the harder you try, the better you're going to get. It's like diving's the complete opposite. It's a sport of absolute precision, where trying anything other than exactly how much you have practiced to try is going to have the adverse effect. And so any of these thoughts, like I definitely did have I knew I would do pretty well. Because I had won the last international. I'd won several of medals throughout the year, but they'd been getting better and better, and I won gold in the last international competition before the Olympics. So I knew I was doing well, and I knew that I had a potential to win a medal. So I did, and I did 2 events. I did 3 meter springboard. I mean, that was never my main event. I came, I think, 16th or something. But then I think that was kind of a nice warm up for platform, which was the main event. And that was at the very end. And I came second in the preliminary round, where they cut the 58 divers down to 18. So it went China, and then everybody else. And then in the semi-final, I came second again after the other Chinese diver. So they swapped positions. So I knew. Well, I guess
in the mix.
The pessimist in me, the pessimist in me was kind of like, okay, well, both Chinese divers have beaten me here, so I've got a really good chance of winning a bronze medal here. But again, those sorts of thoughts are quite counterproductive, and so you just had to kind of let those go every time a thought like that would happen. And then as we got to the final, I don't keep track of what anybody else is doing. And I don't keep track of all I do is have a look at what scores I get and what total score I get. I don't even keep track of kind of what my progressive, what my cumulative score is through the competition, because from there I can deduce how close to my how close to my PB I'm getting, or that sort of thing, and maybe make some inferences on what other people would usually score in total. So these are all ways that my brain can try and trick me to start thinking in counterproductive ways. So that's what I was doing. I was just keeping track of the scores that I was getting from the judges, just to to see if that aligned with how it felt. And I felt like I was diving well. And I saved my highest degree of difficulty dive for the end, to have a really big finisher. So that was the hardest dive in the Olympics, and I'd done it really well in the semi-final and scored over 100 points, which is it's unheard. It's extremely rare to score over 100 points on any dive. And so in the stairwell, just before my last dive, there was a Chinese diver before me, and when he did his dive, I heard the whole crowd go ooh, and I didn't know
ooh
if that
as
was
in ooh good or ooh as in ooh bad.
I didn't know, sure. And I didn't want to know, so I blocked my ears and went la 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 as as the judges were reading out the scores. Because I didn't want that to impact, how I was about to do my dive. And I definitely had the thought in the stairwell that, if my name comes up on top of the leaderboard after my dive, that means that I've got an Olympic silver medal, because I just assumed that the Chinese diver after me was going to win.
Right.
But if I did get a 1 after my score, because you dive in reverse order. So because I came second in the semi-final, I was diving second last. So if I came first after my dive, that means I've got an Olympic silver
up
medal. But I had to let that go. And, you know, so I've seen like footage I've seen of it, you know, as focused as I thought I was still kind of, you know, acutely aware that there were cameras, there were people watching. You know, I'm walking to the end doing my hair.
You want to look your best.
Exactly. But you know, I don't remember anything from you know, once I reached the end of the platform, it was like, you know, one of those textbook zone, like flow state moments.
That would have to be the zone that you hope to achieve. Get into that where no thoughts are out, you're just in the zone, literally. You talk it was your most difficult dive. Explain in layman's terms what the dive involves. To confuse us all.
It's a backward facing dive.
Yep.
And it's got 2.5 somersaults in it and 2.5 full twists in it. So what's that? 360 plus 360 is 720 plus another 180 is like, I don't know, 1,000 or something. I didn't go to school for math. But yeah, it's a lot of twists and a lot of somersaults. So 2.5 somersaults, 2.5 twists. And it was the highest degree of difficulty dive in the Olympics at the time. And so I knew it was a good scorer because I'd done it quite well
is it true it was the highest score in Olympic history for that dive at that time?
Yeah, so after I did the dive, I you know, like it felt good, but you know, like I felt like it could have maybe gone a hair one way or the other.
Yeah.
And when I surfaced after the dive and the crowd was just going absolutely ballistic in the water cube, I knew that I had done a really good dive. And so I was like thanking the crowd, which is customary to do in China. And then the scores came up 10, 10, 9.5, 10, 10, 9.5, 9.5. And there was a 1 next to it. That's all I saw was just the 1 next to my name. And I lost it thinking that like I had an Olympic silver medal. And you know, then I went to the side of the pool, like people were congratulating me already just for, you know, doing the good dive. We all stopped to watch the last diver of the competition, the Chinese diver, who was actually doing the same dive as me.
Yeah.
And he bombed it, like it's a huge splash, like just completely surprised everybody. And you know, didn't even medal. And so I stayed up on top and you know, the whole diving community just engulfed me.
Yeah.
Which was a really beautiful moment. Like everyone just standing there waiting patiently for their turn to congratulate me. It was really, really lovely moment. And I had no idea at the time. Like all I knew was that, you know, I got the gold medal. I had no idea that that it was an Olympic record.
Yeah.
Of the highest scoring dive in Olympic history. I had no idea that I'd set the Olympic record already for the highest scoring dive in Olympic history in the semi-final. So I broke my own Olympic record. I had the 2 highest scoring dives in Olympic history for quite a number of years.
You like to do things in a big way, don't you?
Pretty much. Yeah. And what I also didn't know was that in doing that, in coming out before Beijing, it made me the first openly gay, at least male, but first openly gay that I can find, Olympic gold medalist in history.
Well, at 20, you do things in a big way, don't you? You're like when you shine very bright. I've got a smile on my face because I just think you've taken us through your journey, and I just think it must be overwhelming, the euphoria or the relief, or just what's the feelings that you get that you've achieved something you set out to achieve?
Relief.
On such a grand scale.
It was relief. I like literally the feeling that I remember when stepping onto the podium was just relief that like it had all been worth it. Basically just that it had been worth it, you know, going through those years of sticking with it when I didn't, you know, when I wasn't loving it, coming back, you I was so poor when I came back for that 15 months, like, because I had no funding because I hadn't achieved anything yet. And so, I was working in this office for 5 hours a day, 5 days a week. Like, in order to fit everything into the day, I was always running. I was running to the train station. I was running from the train station to the pool. I was running from the pool back to the train station. I was running from the train station to the work office and then back up to, like, always running, always falling asleep on trains. All I could really afford was basically, like, a can of tuna and 2-minute noodles for lunch every day. And maybe a tin of sweet corn if it was a particularly good week for me financially. And then the rest was just, like, basically baked beans on toast for dinner and cereal. Like, that's literally what I was subsisting on, because I was just
I'm just thinking
struggling.
of a sponsorship deal here for you. If only they knew. In the lead up. Look, it's an incredible story, and I can only imagine, and it sounds like your life, and I've had those times in my life where you're 5 minutes behind everywhere you should be, and it's just you're playing catch up. But your event, at what stage in the Olympics? Was it a ladder or in the middle of the Olympics? Like the 2 weeks?
It was the last day.
Oh, that's a shame, because I thought you might have given us stories about how you partied out after you won your gold and enjoy yourself. But so you would have had to stay focused the whole time.
And because I was so, like, paranoid about, doing anything that was going to jeopardize, giving me the best chance, I did not, like, I stayed in my room for whenever I wasn't in the dining hall or at the pool. I was just in my room by myself reading, trying not to tire myself out. So, it was, I mean, to be fair, I was there to do a job.
Exactly.
But the Olympics do certainly put on a lot of stuff to make it an awesome experience for the athletes as well. I just didn't participate.
Talk us about standing on the dais at the gold medal ceremony. How did you feel, and the Australian national anthem being played and the gold medal placed around your neck?
There were a couple of, like, I guess I was a little bit shell shocked. To be honest, like I said, the only feeling I could actually recognize was relief. But I sang the national anthem loudly and proudly, and I managed to. I don't know where I got that flag from, but someone gave me an Australian flag, and I was running around the pool deck with my Australian flag. I ran up to the stands and gave my partner at the time just a kiss on the cheek, actually. I think my mother was she was there as well. And then went through, and then it was just like media and interviews for a couple of hours after that. Media in the media zone in the pool, and then they took me to non-rights holders media outside the pool. And I think I got back to the village at about, must have been like 2 or 3, and then had to be up again at 5 to start then doing the morning TV breakfast programs back in Australia. So it was crazy.
Chaos. Did you did that change you as a person at that point in time? Did you and you're only 20, and when you look back at 20, how naive and ignorant and stupid you are, and you've got all that thrust upon you. How did it change you?
Yeah, it made me a monster. No, I mean, I certainly did enjoy the validation for sure. The gold medal has this magical property of making you significantly more interesting and better looking and funnier. Like, it's just magic. But I think eventually I started to feel like people only cared about the medal. Like, I was really just a bust to display the medal, to wear the medal. I had no inherent value. It was the gold medal was the only thing that had value, because that's what people were interested in. So, you know, the validation that came with winning Olympic gold medal didn't last for very long. And then for some reason, at some stage after getting back from Beijing, I had a look at the world rankings and discovered that I was actually number 2 in the world, because it's based off total points. And one of the Chinese divers had won more events earlier in the year than I had, and so had accrued more total points. And so here I am, you know, I'm still not the best in the world. And, you know, I think it had 2 effects. One of them was I used that as an impetus to set a new goal, to become, you know, to get that number 1 world ranking. And I did. I got it in 2010. I was ranked number 1 in the world. But it also, I guess, had this huge knock to it. Just started a spiral for me, I think, you know, like still not being the best in the world. Like, you know, I guess, I mean, all I can call it is like I had a relapse in my depression, which, you know, I had been in remission for a couple of years since I moved to Sydney and had this wonderful inclusive training environment and was happy diving. You know, I had some relief from that depression, which I had since I was 14. But it came back with a vengeance after Beijing.
Is there like the post-Olympic letdown after it, and especially when you've achieved the gold medal? Is there the highs, and this has been the aim, I've achieved it? You found another gold to achieve. Well, I want to be number 1. The gold medal wasn't enough, so that drove you a little bit. But is there, and I see a lot of athletes, not just Olympic athletes, but footballers and all that they've left what's driven them, the purpose. They've won their grand final, they've won the World Cup, or done something, and then their life sort of spirals out of control. I can understand it, because I can understand being focused and driven, and then you've achieved it, and then, the world hasn't changed for me. I'm still the same person.
Yeah, there is, they call it like an Olympic come down. And I think it's really, it's a very appropriate analogy to use the terminology that they use like for a drug come down, because you know, the Olympics is such an intense experience, like in terms of like it's an intense sensory experience where there's so much going on all the time, and there's so much excitement, you know, of the competition, and you know, particularly if you have a really good competition, then there's even more excitement. So it's like, you know, you're just being flooded with dopamine and serotonin and noradrenaline like all the time, constantly for 2 weeks. And so of course you're going to be depleted when you like not even just like, you know, the void of like, you know, having this amazing experience that you've been working towards for a very long time, and then, you know, it being over, but even just chemically in your body, you're going to be so depleted. And so, you know, I feel like it's a really appropriate analogy that, and is, you know, it's almost a ubiquitous kind of a universal experience of Olympians, or, you know, not even just Olympians, but like, you know, like you said, maybe after a premiership or like a grand final or whatever, that an athlete would feel that that flat afterwards. And you know, I think I did feel it. I mean, I don't remember it being that horrific. But at the same time, I have seen it happen so many times with so many other athletes. Like, I knew to expect it more when I did eventually retire from sport, because you know, you don't have that purpose anymore.
It's just cut off.
You don't have, you know, something that you don't have the structure anymore. Of something that you've filled, you know, 5 hours a day with every day. You know, that you've got 5 hours a day to an extra 5 hours a day to fill with something that's not just you sitting there with your thoughts going, who am I now? Like, what is my purpose? Like, you know, if I don't have this thing that my identity has been so wrapped up with, if I'm not doing that thing anymore, and that thing that brought me so much validation and, you know, and gave me some esteem in the world, like, who am I and what am I doing? Like, just being left alone with your thoughts for an extra 5 hours a day, which you aren't used to, can be a pretty dangerous place. And so it's no surprise. It's no surprise that, like, you see so many athletes like either turn to, I guess, probably alcohol to numb the feelings, or to drugs to potentially replicate the feelings. And
Did when you came back as the gold medalist and you continued in diving and you achieved your ultimate goal of being the world number one, were you financially supported? Like I've heard people say gold medals don't set you up for life. Was it, you didn't have to work as an admin assistant for 5 hours a day and eat baked beans and run and catch a train? Did the life change for you in that regards, in that, I don't know, Australian Institute of Sport or sponsorship, or what happened there?
Yes, so I didn't have to work as an admin assistant anymore, which was amazing. I could support myself by doing the diving, just because I was staying in the top 3 in the world for the next couple of years, which meant that I was getting access to like training grants. But that was that was basically how I was supporting myself, and I was doing public speaking every now and then, which brought in a little bit extra, but I certainly wasn't raking in endorsement dollars, which is a shame, but I mean, there's nothing I could do with that. But I'm just grateful that I could support myself and just focus on the sport for a few years.
When you made the London Olympics, and I read in an interview or heard you talk about that, and you said that you felt a little bit more pressure on yourself going into the London Olympics, and then quite ironically, after and you didn't medal in the London Olympics, it validated your gold medal that you won at the Beijing Olympics. There was a whole lot of mixed thoughts. Talk me through the London Olympics, why you felt the pressure, and why, even though you didn't achieve what you wanted to achieve at the London Olympics, it validated what you did at the Beijing Olympics.
So I had, basically had a rock bottom, in terms of my depression and how I was kind of not coping with that, and how I was medicating with drugs and just and not being able to control it, really.
Matt, sorry, can I just interrupt you there for a sec? Now that you got the profile, did you, and I know when I spoke to Tom Carroll, the 2 times world surfing champion, when he was using drugs, he felt pressure and responsibility because he was put up there on a pedestal and it was a bigger fall. Like if you were you would have been the front page if you were caught with drugs. Did you feel the pressure of that as well?
For sure I felt the pressure of I wanted to be a good role model. Because there are enough bad role models in the world. I didn't feel like the world needed another one. But I also had a lot of shame about how I was feeling because it felt so unjustified. Like, I'm an Olympic champion. What have I got to be depressed about? Like, and shaming myself for feeling bad about feeling bad doesn't make you feel less bad. It just kind of makes you feel more bad. So
you make sense.
So I, was so desperate to change the way I felt, and but so ashamed of how I was feeling that I felt even less able to seek help for it. And so I just went back to those last not coping mechanisms that I'd used as a teenager to change the way I felt, which was crystal meth. And and then there's so much taboo and shame around that I guess perpetuated the secrecy of it. And I wasn't doing it to enhance my performance, obviously. So, and there was drug testing at competitions. And so I would have to detox before every competition. And that detox before every competition was so horrible. Like, it was just, it was so horrific that I would promise myself with every single cell in my body that I wasn't going to use drugs again when I got back from that competition. And every single time I couldn't keep that promise to myself. And, you know, not being able to keep a promise to yourself that you have made, like, with absolute conviction, and then to fail at that, it kind of tears your self-esteem in half, like, again and again and again. And you just feel just completely powerless and helpless. And, you know, it took me 6 months of me trying to control it by myself, for me to just, I had no pride left to swallow. So that's when I finally reached out for help, which was just such an absolute last resort, because, you know, I couldn't let anybody find out about what I was doing. But I just had to take the risk and take myself off to rehab. And so, you know, it's, you know, that's when the journey of, like, you know, mental health and all that started for me. And, you know, I was also dealing with injuries, and, you know, I had some stress fractures in my spine, and then I had some abdominal tears, which I kept on re-tearing because there was so much pressure to get ready for the next qualifying competition that I would tear it again and again and again. And, you know, so I was going into London, like, woefully underprepared, but I was still the best qualified in Australia to represent the country. And, you know, so this expectation for me to defend my Olympic title was kind of really counterproductive for me, because, you know, when it's framed that way, to defend your Olympic title, anything other than a win is a failure. Like, even if I had won a silver medal, I wouldn't have defended my Olympic title. So even a silver medal would have been a failure, which is, you know, it was a
high bar.
It was, yeah, and quite unhelpful. And so, you know, I just had to kind of reframe that and go, you know what, like, I know I'm not going to defend my Olympic title, but I am still the best person to represent the country at this period of time. And so I just kind of had to go based on that, and go knowing that I was trying my best, and that I wasn't necessarily going to do my best. And I didn't do my best. I missed out on making the final by one place, and I was so disappointed. But, you know, again, had to kind of turn that around and go, no, I didn't do my best, but I did try my best. So, like, could I have done any more in the lead up to London? No, I probably should have done much less to have prevented lots of re-injuries. But, you know, I definitely tried my best, and so I have to be happy with that. And, you know, so I came back to the pool to watch the finals that I should have been in, that I've always been in before. Like, it was such a weird position to be watching a finals for the first time.
And not better.
It was such an unusual experience, and I was so proud of the boys who were diving in the final. And I've never experienced that before. And that pride, I was able to kind of turn around and feel it for myself, because I'm usually in that position. And that was then, like, once I did that and recognized, you know, that I had pride for myself for what I do and my achievements, that was then I realized the first time I actually appreciated that gold medal that I'd won in Beijing. That was the first time I didn't feel like that win in Beijing was a fluke.
Yeah.
And so, you know, yeah, I came away from London not with a medal, but with something that was so much more valuable, because it meant that I, for the first time, was actually able to appreciate the gold medal that I did have.
Well, just the way you're talking about, there's a sense of zen and calmness and peace, where but lead up to it, you're striving, and it appears to be the first time you've sat there and gone, hey, yes, I did something worthwhile, and I should be proud of it.
It was a huge mental and emotional win for me.
Yeah.
That realization. So yeah, again, like that, I ended up leaving London with something far more valuable than what I left Beijing with.
Amazing, isn't it? The mental health journey and the drug addiction. Where are you at with all that now?
I'm 8.5 years clean and sober. off. Like I haven't had anything stronger than a Panadol or a Nurofen in 8.5 years. I even raw dogged a minor wrist operation.
Gutsy.
Yeah, like I just because I didn't want to
get a taste.
I just I think so. So that was pretty difficult. But then again, paracetamol is actually very effective at if you use it kind of as prescribed. It's actually very, very effective at helping with pain. But yeah, so I had tendon cells harvested from my wrist in order for them to be grown up in a petri dish and then re-injected into a separate tendon tear. That was quite an experience. But because I was already in recovery then, that was a choice that I made, and I got through it. And so that's where I am in terms of my drug and alcohol journey is being nearly 9 years clean and sober. And then that, like, I will kind of admit that I've been a lot more, I was a lot more proactive, kind of earlier on in my recovery about my mental health, and and it really showed. Like, my mental health was much better. When I am struggling, I know it's always because I'm not putting in any action. Like, I'm not putting any maintenance. I'm not I'm not kind of reflecting on a daily basis about about the goods and bads of the day. And reflection is just so important in order to to keep on growing and to prevent slippery habits from creeping back in, or to just to give yourself a health check to see where some unhealthy thoughts and feelings and patterns are starting to to root themselves. So I certainly have struggles. Like, I'm extremely I've got quite severe ADHD, and so I've been, even though I've been medicated for that for nearly 15 years, it's I struggle with the symptoms of that. I've been struggling with the symptoms of that more in the past 18 months than I have for my entire life. And there's other stuff that I kind of that creep in, or I might be trying to replace my addiction with, like, maybe other behaviors, like acting out sexually, or that's probably where the biggest that's probably where I would struggle with most. And so it's a constant process.
It's you've talked in previous interviews about a gratitude list that you put forward. Is that something you keep in place? Is that something that you try and focus on, and just explain what you got from compiling a gratitude list each day?
Gratitude lists are probably the best maintenance tool for me, and I'm always doing best in life mentally when I am doing that practice. And when I am struggling, it's usually when that practice has dropped off. And it works in a couple of ways. I think, first of all, it kind of it changes your frame of mind and the way that you interact with the world, in that when you start off looking for things that you're grateful for, you kind of stop looking for evidence that the world is conspiring against you. And so and the other thing is, like, I've because of my history of mental ill health, I have a fear of falling into depression again. Because it just feels like this big scary like black emptiness. And and by doing this gratitude list, I don't have to fear the black emptiness, because it's not going to be empty. Like, if I do sort of fall into depression, if I've thought of 3 things that I'm grateful for just that morning, I'll have those 3 things in my in my big black hole with me, so it won't feel so empty. And then suddenly you don't have the fear of it anymore, and it doesn't feel so bad and so scary. So And then, of course, it's it what I used to do with the gratitude list as well, which I haven't done for quite a long time, is I used to, it's not for everyone, but it was perfect for me at the time, was to make a little artwork out of each gratitude list. So literally just 3 things, but like do it in calligraphy, or, or maybe, take a photo of it and put some effects on it or whatever. But just that creative process was, it was quite meditative and quite mindful as well. And so, it worked on so many different levels. But I think the thing that was, just at the topmost level, it just, you foster an attitude of gratitude. You stop looking for evidence that the world's conspiring against you.
Well, it makes sense. But to me, my observations and listening to you talk and having this conversation, you've set yourself up with some good tools, and you understand that black hole's out there, that you could fall into it, but you've got tools to protect yourself from it. I got through years in homicide, and I don't think I suffered from it, but I knew when I was spiraling out of control. And I got into, years ago, meditation and the thing called Qigong, which is like a moving form of meditation. And when I first started doing it, people were thinking, oh, this is a bit weird. What's this cop doing turning up here? I didn't know why I was so driven to do it. I was doing hard training, but I was doing this soft training as well. I don't do it every day now, but it's there in like a toolbox that if I feel myself spiraling out of control, I can just, okay, I need to check myself. I understand that I'm not looking at things properly, and that works for me. It mightn't work for you. It's just different things. You just got to find that way to deal with things. I always know when I'm in a bad situation, when I walk out in the street or through the city, and every single person I pass annoys me. Like, someone doesn't step out of the way, this, that. I'm thinking, but those 10 people in a row can't be wrong. Maybe it's the way I'm looking at the world at the moment. So, just having those things in your back pocket that you can acknowledge it and, deal with it. And I think it's good. And seeing someone like you talk about it, someone that, we look at you, you're a gold medalist. What have you got to complain about? You can strive, you can achieve. And to be so open, I think that's where it's powerful, the message that you're delivering. Let's talk about life post the athlete. And I think you said at some point in time you got a job and you thought, actually, I thought it would be boring, but it's quite good getting a salary coming in and just going to work each day, and quite fulfilling. Talk us through that transitional period where you've gone from being this elite athlete to, I'm just working like everyone else.
Yeah, it was, I'm not gonna lie, it was a kind of a humbling process, I think, to kind of go from, for the first couple of years after I retired, a lot of my income was still coming from having a name that was recognizable. Like I wrote a book in 2012 that was then turned into a stage show where I spoke a lot about, mental health and that sort of thing. And, that show did really, really well. There was a follow-on show, and speaking engagements. And then I moved to the UK, and I tried to do sort of similar stuff, but my name didn't
carry the weight.
Well, it was no currency, no capital, not recognizable in any way, and therefore didn't open any opportunities. And so, that's when I realized that I couldn't just rely on my name anymore to provide me opportunities. And so, I had to be like a normal person again. Yeah. And actually while initially it was a very humbling, very difficult pill to swallow, because, all I ever wanted since I was a child was to be special, because, I'm just so, even today, even though I recognize it, I do have a tendency to kind of, start creeping towards, leaning more into external esteem every now and then. But yeah, it was a humbling pill. And but actually I found it to be really lovely, because I ever since I've been a child, I've had a lot of anxiety. And one of the areas that anxiety pops up in is financial anxiety. Yep. I think it's because I've never grown up in a house that has been owned.
No, that's okay.
So there's
I can
always
understand where that's coming from then. Yep.
there's always this, and there was always a shortage of money. Like I never went on a holiday as a child. Like, how your family go on, like, I don't know, camping holidays, caravan holidays, or, that never happened. I never went on holidays. I didn't go on, I missed out on a lot of school, like field trips as well, which I just put down to like, I'm doing sport. Like I wouldn't have time to do that anyway. But there was definitely, and I lived as a 5-year-old. When I was 5, we lived without any electricity for 6 months.
That's tough.
Just because mum, kind of rightly in a way, refused to pay an extra fee to the power company, because the reason why we had to pay the extra fee in the first place was because she was so far behind on bills. But so I think the not growing up in a house that we ever owned, and moving around a fair bit, I think it had this impact of me feeling this need for safety and security, and this financial anxiety, and so it's a really long way to go about saying that all of the income that I'd had up until that point, with the cabaret show or speaking engagements and stuff, they're all sporadic and unpredictable and inconsistent forms of income, and I was getting myself into some debt. So actually having a consistent regular income, it was really nice to not have to stress about where the next money was coming from.
It makes a lot of sense. I'm interested in the some of the things that you've done post career, and you talked about the cabaret show you did a book and did your cabaret show. I also did a book and did a live show, and I found doing the live show very, very confronting. Enmore Theatre was my first night, sold out on a Saturday night, and I'm there with Rob Carlton, a good mate of mine. He's an actor, and I thought it would be sort of a sit down, Q&A type thing, but it was Enmore Theatre, and I was very nervous. And Rob told me, he said, this is not Q&A, this is live theatre. We're going to take the audience on a journey. So I had a monologue to learn and about 40 minutes of stuff, and had to time it here and there. I was shitting myself before I walked out the first night, but I really enjoyed it. It was challenging and it was fun, and we toured around the country. And Rob said one thing that he does, and I like the way he lives his life. He challenges himself at least once a year, does something he's scared of. And I was scared of doing that. I'd been a cop for years. What am I doing on the stage at Enmore Theatre on a Saturday night doing a live show? But it was fun, challenging and rewarding. Did you find that you've done, I'm looking at a couple of things that you've done. You did Australian SAS, The Survivor. You went on that. That would have been challenging. Did you do Dancing with the Stars as well?
I did, yep. But,
is there
and absolutely loved both of them. Probably loved Dancing with the Stars more than SAS. But,
right. Talk us through the experience, because again, that's putting yourself out there. You can fail in a big way, and a very public failure.
Yeah. I think I loved SAS. Well, I absolutely loved both of them. Because it gave me sort of structure to train, gave me purpose.
Yeah.
And, so I quite enjoyed the physical, but, I also really enjoyed the novelty of the new experiences. Yeah. And then SAS has got the extra layer of the mental and emotional challenge as well. And I think I have always been very quite open, with the public about, my, well, I guess you could call them my mistakes. Well, they're not really mistakes if you do learn from them, but I guess my character defects, for lack of a better term, my warts, which, and I think the reason I've always been quite open about that stuff, is that I see how the experience can benefit others, like by me sharing. Yeah, so so I shared some stuff that I was quite ashamed about, and stuff that I still struggle with in terms of like honesty is I feel really ashamed to say it, but honesty is not one of my core values, and it never has been. Ever since I was a child, I have learnt that lying is a survival mechanism. Because of how I was disciplined, because of how I was controlled, and I would get punished for doing something. I would get punished for if it was found out that I did something. There was no clemency. There was no you weren't forgiven for being honest about it. If you got found out, you were punished. And so the only way to to get away with it was not to be honest about it, but was to lie and try and get away with it. And that is so automatic, and it causes a lot of problems in my life.
But Matt, you coming out and saying that, and it makes I'm sitting here listening, and it makes me reflect on my life and different things. I think it's powerful that someone like yourself is talking about those things and owning that. And I think it helps people understanding where we've all got faults. No one's perfect, but where those faults are coming from and why you are who you are. So full credit to you.
Yeah, and I mean, awareness is one thing. It's actually, awareness is usually is quite often the most painful place to be in, because it's the area in between not having awareness of the behavior. So you're oblivious to the behavior, which means that it's not kind of upsetting to you. You're just you're kind of, I don't know, damage and chaos is occurring around you. You don't know why, but it's not your fault. But then when awareness is actually a very painful place to be in, because then you're aware that it's actually you're the one that's causing the chaos in your life, and it's the stage before action. When you cause enough pain to you, so when the place is uncomfortable enough, then you'll put in the action to actually try and do something about it. So it's not just having the awareness, it's actually about trying to put in some action to change it afterwards.
Yeah, well, I like to think that we all evolve, and you all learn as you grow, and you learn by your mistakes. Life, other things that, say you've done the book, the Dancing with the Stars. You also went on OnlyFans. Talk us through that. That's and it's not something that's so surprising these days. A lot of people are doing it. How was that an experience for you?
It's been awesome. There's I think I like to take pictures of myself anyway. And I've got lots of fans who want to see the pictures, and so if they want to give me money to see these pictures, then why not? And I don't even do full frontal nudity on my OnlyFans. I think it gets a pretty bad rap. But it's just it's just another way for me to connect with a bunch of people on a different level. I'm pretty open and free and easy about myself and my sexuality. I don't shame it. I know a lot of other people do shame it, which is a shame. And the balance I think I've had to find with it is, before I actually got into it, was I wouldn't want this to jeopardize my chances of, doing anything in the mainstream.
Yeah.
And so what could I do, and what do I feel comfortable with doing, and sharing, that's not going to jeopardize, my chance of doing anything in the mainstream. And I think, the mainstream, doing pornography, I think, would be something that would mean that I couldn't be mainstream. And so, I don't do pornography. I don't do, full frontal.
Yeah.
I just, send, share, sexy pictures, and videos that wouldn't be considered pornography.
Well, I think you explained that well, and there should be no embarrassment or shame to it the way that you've explained it. But it gets a reaction.
I mean, there
from
should
people.
be no shame. Like for people who do actually share. I mean, for me, it was and I've got my own hang-ups. I do have some hang-ups around sex, to be honest. Around my own sexuality, which is so bizarre, and that's something that I have to keep on checking myself with. I don't shame anybody else. Like, I think it's empower. I fully support anybody else's who works as a sex worker, or who does sex work. But I, for myself, I kind of sit back and go, could I defend this in the name, as being art, for example, but all power to other people, who do pornography and that sort of thing. I fully support them, and I don't think that should preclude them. I don't think that should exclude them from being able to have a mainstream career. But I know in reality, that a lot of other people do, and a lot of those other people are decision makers, or for example, with mainstream, decision makers have to think about the talent that they have, having the widest possible appeal, and that they wouldn't want to alienate a whole demographic of people, quite conservative people, just because they have one talent that's is a lot more liberal. So it's unfortunate that that's the way the world is, and actually, an argument could be made that the only way to change that would be to actually have people, to be liberal, with themselves, and also can have, pave the way to actually have mainstream careers as well. And that's the way that a change would be made. I don't know if I'm achieving that, but but also it would be good.
Well, I think the way that you've just articulated that and explained that, I think people can see where you're coming from, and no judgment, and the fact that you're making the comment that people shouldn't be judging others on what they do. And what I can say as a homicide detective, the amount of motives that's driven by sex in one way or another, or suppressed, or that, it's not very healthy. It's not very healthy, and I've seen people do things and commit crimes. I'm not talking with the completely different level when we talk about pedophiles with children. That's completely different. But other adult crimes that have been driven by sex, the wife that's been murdered because the man has found a new girlfriend, and things like that. So many times it comes in, and quite often it's because they've been suppressing what their actual urges are, and that leads them to do something that I don't think they were necessarily a bad person, but they've been lying to themselves and suppressing things, and then they've gone and done something horrendous. So I was curious how you were going to answer that, but I think you answered it very well, and I don't know what else to say. You've covered it all in that. So, your life now. You're married.
Yes, married.
Talk us through that. You had the big wedding, or?
We had biggish. Well, I don't know. No, actually, that's a lie. It wasn't biggish. There was about 70 people, which I think was bigger than I expected it to be. Because
just got out of hand.
I don't have that many friends and family.
Right.
And we did it in Belgium, actually. And so, I was surprised that I actually had, as many family members as I did come over for it. It was lovely. We've been married for 4.5 years. We, just like any married couple, we, have our ups and downs, and, have to kind of work through things as they pop up. And it's pretty unremarkable relationship in terms of, it's very, very normal.
Yeah. Oh, well, that might be what you need at this stage in your life. That sounds, the Olympics, the Paris Olympics. Are you involved in it? Do you attend the Olympics? Are you going to the Olympics? Or you watch the Olympics? What's it like as a post or past Olympian? Do you have any involvement in it? Is there advice that you give athletes competing?
I literally got back yesterday from the Australian Olympic diving team's training camp. They're doing a pre-Olympic camp in the UK. So I went and spent 2 days with them. I love the Olympics. Always watch it. Would always be as involved as possible. I've commentated a couple of Commonwealth Games. Never managed to commentate the Olympics yet. But this Olympics, I will be in Paris doing a couple of things actually. I'll be hosting groups at the diving, spectator groups, on behalf of Airbnb. Airbnb is one of the Olympic, the IOC partners. And so they got a bunch of tickets for different sports. And so they gave a bunch of tickets away and they got some athletes to host these groups. And so I'll be hosting several groups at the diving. And I've also been working for a year and a half with a project called Compete Proud, which is aiming to, make sports more diverse and inclusive places, particularly for LGBTQ plus athletes, but diversity and inclusion works on many levels, in terms of racism, sexism, ableism, all that sort of stuff. So I will actually be in Paris, working at Pride House as well, which is a space that, for the last, since probably 2000 and I think just after 2008, I think it's been a common feature of Olympic Games to have a Pride House, which is a space for queer fans, or athletes or support staff or, just anybody kind of involved in the Olympics, to have a safe space, for them. So I will be there, doing doing interviews with athletes and being around for, meet and greets and education sessions and stuff like that.
Fantastic. I think we might wrap it up at this stage. We in between part 1 and part 2, I was talking to our producer Emily. She'll probably get cranky at me for this, and just saying he's so insightful, as in we've been talking. So I've got to say that too, Matt. I like the fact that you can look at yourself and learn from life's lessons and explain it so well, and you articulate your emotions and all that. And I think by sharing your feelings, I honestly believe you're making a difference. So full credit to you. And maybe the winning the Olympic gold medal is not going to be the highlight of your life, and the way that your life is playing out and helping others is getting you more reward than what you thought the Olympic or what you believe the Olympic gold might get you. So
it's true. Yeah. Thank you. It's a really lovely thing to say. And it's it's kind of something that I hope for myself, that that this achievement is not kind of the best thing that I ever do, and and actually what I'm trying to do is use that as a platform in order to make a real difference in the world, and so that's what I'm trying to do, and that's probably the most validating thing you could possibly say to me. So thanks.
Oh, that's great. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast and making the time. I know you're busy, and all the best for the future. And I've really enjoyed our chat. So thank you.
Well, thanks, Gary. Yeah, I really enjoyed our chat too.
Cheers. We finally got an Olympic gold medalist on to Eye Catch Killers, and the chat that I had with Matt Mitcham, the 2008 gold medalist in the 10-meter platform diving Olympic event, I found quite inspiring. Sad at times when he talks about his childhood and the problems that he had leading up to achieving Olympic gold and life after Olympic golds. He talks about his drug addiction and a lot of other things that I think people will find quite inspirational. I certainly did.